Good afternoon or good evening, depending on where you're joining us from today, and welcome to this Performance Management in Focus webinar, Support for December 2025 Exams. My name is Hazel McLucas and I work as an Education Partner Support Manager at ACCA. Our session today focuses on Make Your Marks, Quick Wins and Study Strategies. You'll learn how to achieve your marks you can secure quickly with smart exam techniques and focused practice. Mr. Trevor has joined us today to deliver this session. He is an ACCA qualified and an expert tutor. He's also a senior lecturer in finance and accounting with extensive teaching experience. He specialises in performance management and is recognised for his clear, practical approach that builds confident, exam-ready students. You can always access the detailed profile in the speaker's bio of your webinar if you want to know more. So during the session, Trevor will explore effective exam techniques, discover smart strategies, and give advice on time management for the exam. He'll recommend what to include and how to focus your studies and practice during these last few weeks leading to your exam day. And towards the end of the session, he'll also answer some live questions coming from you all in the Q&A box. But before I hand things over, I'd like to just briefly run through a couple of housekeeping items. At the bottom of your screen, you'll notice there's a number of icons that you can use. Please ensure that both the media player and the slides are selected because you'll need to use both of these throughout the webinar. You can also use the chat function to engage with fellow participants, but please avoid sharing any personal information in the chat. And also, if you look out for the icon that resembles a file, if you click on this, it will give you access to helpful materials related to today's webinar, including direct links and a copy of the slides. You can rearrange your screen to suit and resize your windows if you need to, but if any point you can't hear what we're saying or you can't see the slides, then the best thing to do is to refresh your browser. By registering for today's webinar, you will receive an email tomorrow with all the details on how to watch it again. So don't worry if you miss anything or if you run into technical difficulties, you'll be able to catch up with the recording later. I'm going to hand over to Trevor in a moment and I will be back with you towards the end of the session. If you'd like to ask Trevor or ACCA a question, then please post them in the Q&A section that's on your screen. And just a quick note, we might not be able to respond to everybody individually, whether it be verbally or in the chat, but we will do our best to share questions and answers that are helpful to everyone on today's webinar. And now I'll hand over to Trevor.
Thank you very much, Hazel. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well, and I hope you are as excited as I am to go through this webinar. Any questions, please drop them in the Q&A. So we're going to have a 15-minute question and answer segment. So you can drop your questions. So I should be able to get to some of the questions. And some of the questions will also be answered by the ACCA team. So during the session, I won't have my video on, just to reduce the load on the internet so that we don't have any complaints. But please, let's engage via the chat platform. Let's ask questions and let's enjoy the session. Kickstart our session, I'm just going to start with just demystifying performance management. I know many of my students don't like performance management for some reason. And there might be people also joining the session who do not like performance management. But to kick off, we need to have the right mindset. So we need to fall in love with performance management. I think that's the beginning. Everything else that we're going to talk about, I think, will fall on our love for performance management. In performance management, we can break it down into 3 areas. So we have the cost foundation, which is the foundation of everything that we're going to talk about in performance management. And we have the decision making, which includes the price and decision making. We have performance management, where you find some of your favorite topics like variance, budgeting, risk and uncertainty. That's everything that we have in performance management. It's areas that are actually practical. So it's things that you can think through logically. So key to performance management is understanding the logic. So take time to understand what really is happening here. So what's the logic behind what's happening? That's going to be very important as you study. If you're studying to understand, not just studying to pass, but study to understand, it becomes easier when you get to the exam and you just have to apply your knowledge. So let's not try to spot the exam. That's not going to work. So those are some of the pitfalls. So don't try to pass on the multiple choice questions. Don't try to pass only by knowing the numbers. So don't try to question spot. So let's cover the syllabus in its entirety. So we want to cover each and every chapter that we have. We want to be comfortable. Then we can go to exam technique. If you don't have the foundation, if you haven't gone through your content, then most of the things that we're going to talk about here cannot be applied. Because exam technique is after we've understood the content, then now we can apply it to the exam. So today we're going to talk about exam technique. And the best way to learn about exam technique is by practicing. We need to do questions. So I can tell you all about exam technique, how to go about questions. If you do not apply it, then it just remains in this theoretical realm. We need to actually start doing questions. And the practice platform is going to be where we're going to be spending most of our time, the 3 weeks remaining. We're going to be on the practice platform, attempting questions, practicing everything that we're going to talk about today. We're also going to go into smart strategies, especially for our section C questions. What's the best approach? What's the best strategy to use for section C? We're also going to talk about how to stay in control of your time during the exam. The majority of the students struggle with time management. And for some of us, you never get to the point where you're going to finish the exam. So we need to come up with a strategy. So what's the best approach? How should we go about it? Some of us are able to utilize the time effectively. So the 3 hours, we're able to shade to section A, B, C, and it works well for us. But we still have some students who struggle, even if we tell them this is the time that you need for A, B, C, because we don't all have the same strength, but we need to have a strategy going into the exam. Always remember, we're not aiming for perfection. We're not going to get 100%. So forget about perfection. So understand that some of the questions you're not going to get them right. Don't let it stress you. Don't let it bother you. You need to go into the exam fully understanding that some of the questions you're not going to get them right. But what we need to do is the questions that we're comfortable with, we need to make sure that we're not rushing through them. We're actually going through the process, the right process for us to get the answers correct. Then we're going to talk about our 3-week plan, the 3 weeks remaining. What exactly should we be doing? We need to have a plan. Everyone, we need to write down your plan. Don't just think about it in your head. So stop, write down your plan, go to the practice platform, so assign mocks for yourself. Then you go to the plan, you say, these are the mocks that I'm going to be doing. Mock 1, week 1, mock 2, week 2. Put it down. Find an accountability partner. If you have a study partner, you tell each other, this is what we're doing. At the end of the week, you review together. Then you hold each other accountable. Find someone who's going to hold you accountable. In the case where you don't have, you have to hold yourself accountable. Come up with a plan, and every week do your variance analysis. Let's apply what we learned. So you say, did I do mock 1? Yes or no? And why did I not do it? Then we refine. We go to week 2. We apply what we learn in performance management, comparing what we planned and what's actually going to happen. Then lastly, we're going to finish with a question and answer. So I hope you're going to be dropping your questions in the Q&A. Then we're going to address those questions at the end of that session. So we're starting off with exam technique. And the assumption is we already know the content. So we have gone through our study app platform. We've gone through the chapters. We've been diligent. But now we want to know it's exam time. We're in the exam. How are we going to go about it? One of the most common questions is, Mr. Trevor, should I start with section C and get the calculations right? Or should I just start with section A, go to B, C? I think for majority of the students, let's attempt the questions as they come. Don't try to start with section C. It's only an exception for students that are very good with their time management. Yes, you can start with section C, but for majority of the students, it's 99%. Let's start with section A. The smaller scenarios build confidence. If you ever get to a question where you're not comfortable, flag it, go to the next one. You're not going to be perfect. Move on to the next one, just keep swimming. When you get to section B, the same thing. Attempt questions as they come. Try to avoid reading through all the questions and trying to figure out which one should you start off with. Attempt them as they come. Whenever you struggle, flag the question, go to the next question. You're not going to be perfect. Just keep swimming. We can lose a few marks and we're still going to be able to pass the exam. To pass, we need to score the 50. The first thing that I want us to look at is reading to understand. When it comes to exam technique, before you can answer the question, you need to make sure that you have understood what does the examiner want? What's the requirement? We're going to be practicing. We're going to do mocks on the practice platform. Now, when you get to the exam, you might see a question that's familiar. It's similar to a question that you did. It doesn't mean that the question is the exact same question. You need to stop, read carefully, understand the requirement. Before going through the scenario, read the requirement. Figure out what are the keywords, what are the numerical clues, what concept is being tested. Is this costing? Is this decision making? Is it variance analysis, budget? When you read the requirement first, when you go to the scenario, you're now actively reading. It's not passive, you're actively reading. Your mind is looking for the answer. The common mistake is students rush and they misread what is being asked. And when you misread, you're going to misinterpret, you're going to choose the incorrect answer. So it's very important that we slow down. Let's understand the keywords. You see one of the examples that we're going to look at a question. Understand what is the keyword. Some questions will say, which of the following is true about throughput accounting? Now, if you're in a rush, you might read this incorrectly and you just pick the first answer because you did not stop and think about this. So stop, understand the requirement. What are the keywords? So we're looking for options that are true, not that are false. Options that are true. So always stop and spend time just understanding the requirement. We're going to talk about the time management, but first, it's about the technique. You can always improve on the time management. You can find ways of improving, but first you need to have a good understanding of the exam technique, understanding the requirement. With section B, don't read the scenario before reading the requirement. Reading the requirement already gives you insight into what topic is being assessed. What does the examiner want? Is it risk and uncertainty? Is it linear programming? Is it break-even analysis? When you now go to the scenario, you're now looking for the clues. So now you're scanning for the data that you need. And depending on the question, you see some examples of the question that I'll show you. Sometimes you don't have to immediately read the whole scenario. There might be a table where you can just go to the table, extract the data that you need, and answer the question. Sometimes you need to read through the scenario to be able to answer the question. You're only able to know after reading the requirement. So don't read all the requirements for section B. So read one at a time, then answer it. If you do not understand it, flag it, move on to the next one. We need to go into the exam knowing that we're not going to score a perfect mark. And let's be comfortable with that. It should not make you anxious. It should not make you panic. You need to still be comfortable and know that I can skip this and still pass the exam. Then section C, the constructed response, same principle. Let's understand the requirement. Now section C changes a bit because now we need to know the verb. Are we being asked to explain? Are we being asked to discuss? What does the examiner want? And with section C, every time we answer the question, we need to include the scenario, we need to include the exhibit. Don't write everything that you know about that particular topic. Answer what is being asked. What is the requirement? We need to break that requirement into mini tasks. What am I going to calculate? What am I going to explain? Is there anything that I need to recommend? And we know that when we explain it, we need to be using our numbers that we calculate. We are not explaining just theory. We need to be combining the numbers that we calculate with the theory. It's going to be a marriage between the two things, the theory plus the context being the exhibit. In our week one, what I want us to do is, for a second, you can just forget about time. Just go through requirements, just understand the requirement. Stop and think about the requirement. And you ask yourself, okay, what topic is this? What knowledge do I need here? What that does is it tells you if there are any knowledge gaps. If you read the requirement and it's a topic that you're not familiar with, that means you have knowledge gaps. You need to go back to the study hub. You need to fill in those knowledge gaps. I don't want us to do everything at once, to try to manage time and do the understanding of the requirement. For week one, you can just focus on fully understanding the requirement, spending time breaking down the requirement, coming up with a proper structure. And when we get to week two, we want to work on the time management. Let's time everything that we do. If you're already comfortable with understanding the requirement, then you can already jump into the time management. Now I want us to look at an example. So this is from practice exam 1 on our practice platform. When you go through the question, we say start off with the requirement. The requirement is saying, what is the budgeted life cycle cost per unit for the product? This is a section A question, multiple choice question. So what are the keywords? You want the budgeted life cycle cost per unit. This means that we need to have knowledge of life cycle costing. And here we need to understand that we want the cost per unit. So if we have any total costs, we need to divide them with the number of units. And this is from the budget. Now you can go to the scenario because your mind already knows what is being asked. Now you can now read the scenario, then you now take the data and you address the requirement. Because we want the cost per unit, any total cost, you need to divide it with the number of units to get the cost per unit. When we're going to talk about time management, so yeah, ideally we want to spend 2 minutes on those questions. Sometimes you might just be over the 2 minutes. Sometimes you might be under the 2 minutes. It depends with the type of question. Some questions are a bit complex, some not as much, some are theoretical. So your time is going to be allocated over different types of questions. Don't be too harsh on yourself. What we need to do is after every 5 questions, we need to check our time. After every 5 questions, and I'll talk about that in detail. So as we practice in after 5 questions, we check our time. If you can do it after every question, but I find that it just makes you more anxious if you're doing it every question and your eye is on the clock. So you can break it down, 5 questions, you check the time. But subconsciously, your mind already knows that I need to manage the time, and it comes from practice. I'm not going to give you time to do this question, but I just wanted to explain here that when you go through the question, figure out the keywords. This is a budgeted life cycle cost per unit. So we're going to go to the scenario, pick the total costs, then calculate them per unit. And we're given total fixed production overheads here, and they are absorbed based on total machine hours. You need to absorb them, then go to the scenario and change that to per unit. Because when you absorb, you're going to absorb per hour. But we don't want cost per hour, we want cost per unit. Then we have a different type of question under our objective test, which is the fill-in question, which requires you to do a calculation and you fill in with an answer. And with these questions, understanding the requirement, again, is a starting point. The question is saying, what is the favorable materials yield variance? Already you know that, oh, now I'm in variance analysis. Performance management, we're talking about yield, output. I want the yield variance, not mix, just the yield variance. And it has to be to the nearest whole dollar. In the exam, I don't want us to be writing the formulas, then put in the numbers. By the time we get to the exam, we need to just put in the numbers, not put the formula, then put in the numbers. We want to reduce the time that we're spending on each question. I want to give you just a minute. If you have a piece of paper where you are, just try to quickly calculate this. Just try quick calculation. It's a yield variance question. By now, I'm assuming you know how to calculate the yield variance, so you know the formula, you've understood the logic. Yield variance, we're comparing standard yield, which is the yield that was supposed to be produced if we stuck to the standard. We compare with the actual yield, then we multiply with the standard price per unit. Instead of writing down the formula, by the time we get to the exam, we're just putting in the numbers. I want you just to try it without writing down the formula. Giving you a minute, try to answer this question, then you can put your answer on the chat platform. So just a minute. Attempt. So I hope you have a pen and paper that you are going to use to write your notes and just do a quick calculation so that we are just engaged, just to test your knowledge. Just quick calculation and you put your answer in the inbox. And I'm also going to show you how I would do this question. So I would go about the question. So I'm hoping that you have given it a shot. And I'll also share with you the approach. It's the best approach because we don't want to be writing down formulas all the time. We want just to get to the answer. And as we practice, yes, we can write down the formulas, but by the time we get to the exam, let's avoid having to write the formulas in full. Let's just go straight. Let's answer the question. So I'm just going to just check if there are any answers. I'm going to share my screen with you. So instead of having to write the standard yield, compared to your actual yield, then you say multiplied by the standard cost per unit. By the time that you get to the exam, you already know that standard yield compared to the actual yield. The standard yield is given 3,000. then, so it's not the actual yield, it's the one that's given. So we're given the actual yield. Then you had to calculate the standard yield. And to calculate the standard yield, you need a separate working. We know that the 10 kgs are producing 1 unit. Then we're 29,000 kgs. So 29,000 kgs should have produced how many units? Then you do the math, that will give you 2,900. That's the standard yield. You compare with the actual yield. Then you multiply with the standard cost per unit. You're getting this from the standards. So you go to your standards, you take the cost, then you bring it what? You bring it here. In the exam, we want to avoid having to be writing down the narrations. By the time we get to the exam, we want just to be putting in the numbers. But to get to that point, you need to have practice. You need to have been practicing lots of questions, not writing the formula, just going straight to put your numbers down. That's section A and section B. In section C, we need to show the examiner what we're doing. It's different. But for section A and section B, we're managing time. We don't need to show the examiner every step. The examiner is not going to see what we're doing. So that's how you do the questions. Then there's another question here. It's again an MCQ. Here it's important to read the requirement carefully. It says, which of the following is not likely to be a potential benefit of introducing the system? Which of the following is not likely? Take a minute, just understanding the requirement. Take a second, understand the requirement before you start looking for the answers. So here it's saying which of the following is not likely. Then now you can go to the scenario. Understanding the requirement is going to be the first exam technique that you need to get right, because you cannot answer what you don't understand. You need to have a good understanding before you can answer. What is the examiner asking me? And I've put another example here again, but same principle. We start with the requirement. What is the material operational price variance? And you know that, oh, it's operational price variance. That means I'm comparing my original standard with the revised standard. That means when you're calculating, you're looking for original standard and you're looking for revised standard, because it's an operational price variance. When you're not going through your information, you know exactly what you are looking for. Then on section B, same principle applies. Understand your requirement. Start by reading through the requirement before you go through the scenario. So this is a question asking about the minimax regret approach. We know that with the minimax regret approach, we need a regret table for you to answer it. So when you go through your scenario, you're now looking for a regret table. But we don't have a regret table, we have a payoff table. That means that you'll need to convert the payoff table to a regret table. Because you would have understood the requirement, when you go through the scenario, you know exactly what you are looking for. I need a regret table, so I go to my payoff table. I need to construct a regret table. In some questions, the regret table does not come as it is here in this question. You might find that supply is on this side, then demand is on the other side. Things that we have to be very careful. So as we practice, do not then assume that these questions are going to be the exact same questions that we find in the exam. Let's make sure that we read what the examiner wants. What is the requirement in the exam? Don't assume it's similar to a question that you did when you were practicing. So this is a different version of the question. That's why it's important just to take time, not to rush through things. Take time to go through every question diligently. This question might be changed how the examiner provides them. The examiner can change the approach. You need to make sure that you fully understand the requirement. Then let's talk about then smart strategies. And on smart strategies here, our focus is going to be on section C. So section A and section B, let's attempt them as they come. If you have a difficult question, challenging question, flag it, move on. Just keep swimming. Section B, same thing. Complex question, flag it, move on. When you get to section C, for you to be able to score marks, you need to leave lots of evidence of what you're doing for the marker to see. Unlike section A and B, where your workings are on a piece of paper, you take your answer, you plug it in. Now, section C, the examiner wants to see your whole thought process, the assumptions that you made, the calculations that you had, step by step, what you were doing. Why is that important? It's important because in a case where you make mistakes, the examiner is still going to give you marks under the on-figure rule, where you are using the figure that you calculated incorrectly, but your analysis is correct. You are not going to be penalized twice. So an example is, say you calculate the gross margin incorrectly, but now you comment on that gross margin that you have calculated incorrectly, but you comment on that one accurately. You are still going to score your mark. So you're not going to be penalized for the incorrect calculation and the commentary. If the commentary aligns with your calculation, then you're scoring what? You're scoring marks. So that's why it's important that we leave a trail for the marker, how we are thinking, everything that we're doing, how we are processing the question, leave it for the marker to follow. And in your commentary, make sure that you are including it. For section C, it's important that we understand the verbs. If you do not understand the verb, you're not going to be able to answer the question. So as part of understanding the requirement, you need to understand the verb. And I'm going to talk about two here: explain and discuss. Now, explain means tell us how something happens. Describe the why. How did we get to this point? How are you concluding that we need to dump project A and take project B? So if it's a decision-making question, take the examiner through your thought process. Do not just give the examiner the conclusion. Tell the examiner how you arrived at the conclusion. So how you respond, you're going to use the cause and effect reasoning. So you're going to go through the why, and you're telling them the how something happened, why it happened. That's you explaining. You can never explain in point form. Point form is meant to provide points. You need to give points. That's why it's point form, is to provide points. When the examiner says explain, you need mini paragraphs. You cannot be providing one-liners. You need a mini paragraph. That's how you explain. That's how you discuss. It's a mini paragraph. If you find yourself on section C providing one-liners, just know that, just remember, hope you remember my voice, that you are not addressing the requirement. You are not. One-liners are not an explanation. You need a mini paragraph. You need to make it clear what you're talking about. You need to apply it to the exhibit. That's a mini paragraph. So you have about 3 to 4 lines or 2 to 4 lines. That means that you are explaining or you are discussing. If it's just a one-liner, you are not answering the question. So as we practice, you need to always remember, always, section C, I should not use one-liners. I need to build mini paragraphs. If I don't have mini paragraphs, I'm not completely addressing the requirement. I need mini paragraphs that are going to expand on my ideas. I need to use the exhibit. I need to use that information. It's there for a reason. If I'm not using it, then it means I'm not answering the question. What I tell my students to do all the time is consciously, you need to have a paper where you're ticking, am I applying the exhibit? So when you've written a paragraph, you ask yourself, did I use the exhibit? You tick. Did I provide an explanation? You tick. If you have not used the exhibit, then you haven't answered the question. You need to stop, figure out how to bring in the exhibit. Then we have discuss. Now, discuss comes in two forms. And in red there, that's mainly for our paper, PM. So discuss can mean present both sides, present both perspectives, advantages, disadvantages, benefits, drawbacks, opportunities, risks. But discuss can also mean provide a reasoned, developed explanation, not a one-liner. We want a developed explanation. You need to reason it out, tell us why, tell us how. You're explaining your ideas, you're developing your ideas. So you're giving us detail, you're telling us how things happen, you're supporting it with logic. You can never list. If you're not going to get anything else out of this session, what I want you to remember is section C, if you find yourself listing, if you find yourself just giving points, just know that you are not addressing the requirement. You are never going to get a question that just says list the points. It's about explaining, making it clear, describing the why and how something happens, or it's about providing a reasoned, developed explanation where you have to develop your ideas. And we need to use mini paragraphs, always mini paragraphs. Then what contributes to effective presentation of exam answers? So for section C, we need to signpost and we need to use headings for each point of our findings. So when we have a question, let's say a question is asking us for financial and non-financial measures. So you need to put in the financial measures and use that as a heading. Then you need to put again a signpost. Every financial measure you calculate, put a signpost. What is the financial measure? Did you calculate return on investment? Use a subheading that this is a return on investment. You explain it, you calculate it. Let's signpost everything. The marker needs to know what we're doing. It's as if you were talking to the marker and walking them through your thinking. You're not going to be there with the marker, so what you can only leave the marker with, it's a trailer of how you thought about it. And we need good subheadings. You need your headings that are going to guide you. Articulate and develop each point of your findings. We've talked about this. Explain your ideas, discuss your ideas. Use paragraphs for each developed point. Never list, never just give points. We need paragraphs. A paragraph, it's a mini paragraph, ensures that you have fully addressed the requirement. Avoid using jargon, don't waffle, don't use point form answers. For your numerical calculations, markers are looking for clarity, accuracy, and logical flow. So it's not just about you getting the answers right. If you got the formula right and you had the numbers correct, but then maybe you incorrectly used the Excel formula, if you showed the marker what you did, the formula and the numbers, you are still going to score some marks. You might not score all the marks, but you're going to score some marks. We need to use proper labels for numbers, standard cost, or if it's material variance, proper labeling. We need to leave a trailer for the marker. The marker needs to know what is it that you are putting here, that they can award you marks. Show reasoning whenever it's required and label your answers clearly. Don't leave answers unlabeled. Provide a label. What is it that you calculated here? Give it a name. Provide a label. Don't just leave calculations without providing a label. We already have talked about this, so I just put an illustration here. Just when you're going through a question, section C, you ask yourself, what is the verb? It's saying discuss. Then you know that you can never discuss by giving points. You need mini paragraphs to develop your ideas, to provide a reasoned argument, to clarify the point. So you will need mini paragraphs. Then there is a conjunction word here. It says you also need to, not only financial measures, you need non-financial performance what? Measures. And as we going to go through the discussion, we need to support our answer by using the data from the exhibit. So you are going to do your calculation. You'd drop down that Excel or spreadsheet function, you do your calculations just to make them clear. It's better if you do them on the spreadsheet. Some students prefer to still type them down, but it's better in a spreadsheet. You signpost them, you label them, the examiner can see everything clearly. Once you're done, then you can start providing your reason argument. You can start the discussion. And when we started off, we talked about this. We said some students think that they will pass by just knowing how to calculate. But from this question here, we can tell that calculations here, they have a lower weighting than the discussion. The calculations use them to support your discussion. And the beauty is, if you do not calculate correctly, but you take those calculations, you discuss them correctly, you are still going to score marks. So don't just leave the calculations blank. Calculate, show the examiner what you did, even if you make mistakes. If you take those calculations and you discuss them correctly, you are still going to earn marks for your discussion, as long as it's a correct discussion. You are not going to be penalized. Then we're going to talk about how to stay in control of your time. And we're also trying to stay in control of our time that we have for this webinar. So I'll try to go through this a bit quickly. And this is one of the common questions again. How many minutes do I need for section A? So we advise students to take about 35 minutes for 30 marks. So you are looking at 2 minutes per question approximately, and check your time after every 5 questions. It's easy to check the time because it's 10-minute intervals. It's not difficult to check the time. Remain calm. Don't be anxious. Whenever you have a question that's difficult, flag it and move on. We're trying to balance 2 things, speed and accuracy. And how do we learn to balance that? Through practice. The more questions we do, and the better we become at balancing speed and accuracy. You can do 5 questions in batches as you practice. Just do 5 questions and see how much time am I taking. If you're taking 12 minutes, then you try to figure out, why am I taking 12 minutes? Can I cut down some time? If not, then you know that, okay, my average is 12 minutes, so it means I'm going to spend about 36 minutes, which is not too bad. It's still fine, as long as we're making sure that we are addressing the requirement and we're getting the marks. Section B, we want 55 minutes for the 30 marks. We want 55 minutes because we have scenarios. We need to put in more time to the scenario. There's more reading time to the scenario. 18 minutes per case. We have 55 minutes in total. Practice again, scenario by scenario. That's for week 1. Don't do the homework. Just take maybe a scenario. Time yourself, 18 minutes. See if you're able to complete. Then you can take another scenario, refine. Always remember to just keep swimming or just move on. Whenever you're stuck, don't try to perform magic or a miracle. It's not going to happen. Be confident that the questions that you're doing, you're getting them right. Questions that are complex or difficult, you flag them and you move on and you'll still be fine. Then the last section, 90 minutes. So 90 minutes because, again, there's more content to read. We have 90 minutes. And the time we need to break it down into the time to plan. Don't just go full force, responding to the requirement. Plan. Stop and think about, what am I going to talk about? Then you can write for 30 minutes. You can review for 9 minutes. But you need to take time for planning. As you're reading, you're doing your plan. So you're going through the content, you're planning, what am I going to talk about? You put your subheadings. Make sure that you have clear structure. Section C is about leaving evidence for how you were thinking for the marker. Show the marker that this is how I thought through this. These are my assumptions. This is the yield variance. This is standard cost per unit. Leave the examiner, leave the spreadsheet with evidence. That word processor, you need to put in your evidence how you were thinking about it. Never chase perfection. What we want to do is to ensure that we score a passing mark. We want to manage our time to ensure that we still score a passing mark. We are not going to get everything right, but the questions that we are doing, we're getting them right. We're using our time effectively. We're understanding the requirement. We are applying our knowledge if it's section C. We're not just providing theory. We're actually providing the detail, the theory as well as the application. And the last thing, so I'm just running out of time here. I need to take my own time management skills as well. So just one more slide. It's just our final push. So our final push, we need to be doing a mock every week. If you can even add more questions throughout the week. Week 1, I'm not too worried if you're not able to do the mock under exam conditions. As long as you're doing what we talked about making sure that you understand the requirement, answer what is being asked. Don't just answer the topic. Answer what is being asked of you, what is required of you. Then week 2, let's time ourselves and see where are we struggling? Which section are you struggling? Always have your eye on the clock. And as we go through the 3 weeks, spend time making sure that you fill in any knowledge gaps. Go back to the Study Hub platform. If there are any knowledge gaps, make sure that you fill in those knowledge gaps, come back, attempt the mocks. Let's maximize the practice platform. There are many good mocks that will help you practice. It's almost a given that if you're practicing, that's assuming you have gone through your content, you stand a higher chance of passing than someone who's not practicing, who's just focusing on reading the content. Hazel, 3 minutes over my time, but I'll just hand over to you as I check my questions, just to see which questions I can answer.
We're still okay for time, so feel free to keep going with the questions.
Oh, okay, cool. Let me just go through the questions. Okay, so this question says, I failed my PM exam by 2 marks in the past. And in the past, I have a track record of clearing my exam on first attempt, and PM is the last skill paper. Please advise me what to do. So 2 marks is not a bad attempt at all. Failing by 2 marks, that's 48 marks. And what I'd advise you to do is, let's go straight to the practice platform. Then let's practice more questions and identify any knowledge gaps, any topics that you're not comfortable with, and go back and make sure that you have solidified those topics. So getting 48 means you're very close. It's just the final push, then you can get over the 50. But if you go to the exam, then banking on the knowledge that you have, it's not the right approach. We need to sit down again, self-review. Which areas am I good at? Which areas am I not? Then strengthen the areas that you're not good at. Also making sure that you don't neglect those areas that you're good at. So strengthen the areas, your weak areas, and also reinforce on your good areas. And practice. Do as many questions as you can. Under timed condition, under exam conditions. 2 marks is not a bad mark at all. I'm confident that you write again in December, you're definitely going to pass. Just make sure that don't just go in with the knowledge from the previous paper. Many students make that mistake. You need to do questions, fill in the knowledge gaps, because there are obviously some knowledge gaps, so fill in those knowledge gaps, get comfortable with areas that you're not comfortable with. Then practice more past papers. Then there was a question on how much time should be taken for section A and section B. So I've talked through this. Section A, let's give it 35 minutes. After every 5 minutes, you check your time. It should be around 10 minutes, then 20, then 30. When you're practicing in week 1 and week 2, you can even just do section A questions and time them and see how you are performing. Flag questions that are challenging, come back to them later on. Do the questions that you're comfortable with. And one thing that you need to do is when you go to the exam, use the calculator that you have been using to practice. Don't borrow a calculator the day of the exam. You're going to struggle using a different calculator. Be comfortable with the calculator that you're using. Practice with the same calculator and go to the exam with the same calculator. It just makes it easy. You don't want to be struggling with a calculator that adds onto the time pressure. There's another question says, can time series question and trends be tested in section C? So this question here, I'm assuming it's an assumption. I might be wrong. It's when students want to spot and you don't like a particular topic, then you ask, is it going to be tested? Because you don't like it. And I said when we started off, we need to fall in love with performance management. It's a very beautiful subject if you understand the logic. Fall in love with it. It's very practical. For those of you that are already working, it's things that you can apply at your workplace. For those that are not yet working, it's things that you'll be applying in your day-to-day life. It's something that's very practical. You need to fall in love with it. So yes, time series and trends can definitely be tested. And you need to be comfortable with that content. Time series analysis on paper seems like something that's so complex, complicated, but it's not. What's happening with the time series is we say, let's assume that there is a linear relationship. But we know there's no linear relationship, but we're making an assumption for us to have a good starting point. And we use our regression analysis for the linear regression, or we use the moving averages. We want to come up with the linear relationship. But because we know that there are some variations, seasonal variations, random variations, cyclical variations, then we can add them. We can incorporate them either using the multiplicative method or the additive method. But the general theory is, so we have data that is not following a linear relationship, but we want to use it to focus. It's difficult to use it as is, so we need to first assume that there is a linear relationship. But we know there's no linear relationship. So once we have assumed that there is a linear relationship, then we say, okay, but there's seasonality. In Q1, we're always above the trend. Q2, we're below the trend. So let's incorporate seasonal variation. And we use the multiplicative method or the additive method. It's something that you actually use when you're working, when you want to focus. When you have data that does not have a linear relationship, you start off by assuming there's a linear relationship. Then you can focus by incorporating the variations. And there's a question that says, I struggle with yield and mixed variance and how to best approach such questions. What I want you to do is I want you to go to the technical videos. So the technical videos are going to be very helpful. So technical videos, they go through some of the topics that students find difficult. So you can go to YouTube on the ACCA page, where you'll find some explainer videos, topic explainer. And I think yield and mixed variance should be part of that explainer video. If not, on the Study Hub, there are very good examples. And I always tell my students that with the mix and yield variance, don't think of it as something that happens or occurs in the textbook. You need to think about it practically. So when you do the examples, try to understand what are we trying to do. It's only that in the session here, we are just focusing on exam. So I'm not going to be able to break down the concept of the yield variance and the mix, but I showed you a question on how to answer yield variance question, where you're comparing your actual yield and your standard yield, and you needed to multiply with the standard cost per unit. I had put the yields, I did not go on to do the multiplication. But the yield and the mixed variance, it's variances that you should be able to wrap your hand around by starting off by understanding the usage variance. Once you understand the usage variance, then you break it down into its components, the mix, the yield, variance, and know what are we talking about on the mix. So we're talking about the impact on cost if we change how we mix the inputs. Now yield, we're talking about the impact because of different what? Yields. Go to the Study Hour platform to recap on the content. Also use the topic explainer videos. Let's see if there's another question that I can take here. It says, are there any repetitive section C questions? Again, this is another question that is trying to spot the exam. I'm not going to give you topics that I would say go focus on. I would be doing you a disservice. Let's first of all go through the content. The assumption we should have gone through the content by now. And let's avoid sporting the exam. Let's not question sport. Let's be comfortable with all areas in the syllabus. Then let's practice. Whatever the examiner throws at us in section C, when we're ready. If I tell you that these sections have been examined over the past, say, 8 sittings, and you focus on them, and the examiner decides to choose a section that they have not been examining, you are going to get to the exam and you panic because you say, Mr. Trevor told us that this has been repeated, so it's highly likely that it's going to be in the exam. Then you don't find it. What happens? You're shocked. You become anxious. Now, the anxiety then affects you answering the question, even if it's not a difficult question. But because you now have a topic that you're facing on the screen that you did not go through, now you are thrown off. So I want us to go through the entire syllabus. Let's be comfortable with everything. Let's not question sport. Let's not try to pass on the multiple choice questions, section A and section B, or the objective test questions rather. Let's not try to pass by just knowing the numbers. You want to fully develop all the skills required for you to pass the exam. And we are not just learning to go past the exam. We need to build the skills. We need to acquire the skills that we are going to then use in the work environment. What you're doing in performance management does not stay in the textbook. It's content that is actually practical, content that you're going to be using your day-to-day lives when you're in a role of, say, management accountant. It's things that are real, it's things that you should be able to logically follow, logically apply in your day-to-day life. And there's another question also saying, are we guaranteed to get a question on analyzing performance on a company section C? There's no guarantee in the exams, no guarantee. So guarantees, we have 100 marks in the exam, there's section A, section B, section C. That's the guarantee that we have. We need to know the entire syllabus. Let's be comfortable with all our content. Let's fall in love with the subject. Before you get to the day that you write the exam, you need to change your mindset. Love every part of the subject. Understand what we're trying to do in performance management. Understand the different sections. Understand the logic. Then it becomes easier when you're practicing and you're doing the questions. Hazel, over to you.
Thank you so much, Trevor. And before we finish up, I just want to quickly recap the 3 best resources that you could use to equip yourself for your exam. So firstly, the practice platform, which Trevor has mentioned, and it contains ACCA specimen and past exam content that you can self-mark within the platform using marking guides and sample answers. But it allows you also to track your performance, and this will give you confidence that you're exam ready. And you'll also find the pre-December mock exams available on there. Also, there's the ACCA Study Resources YouTube channel, and on here you can find latest videos to help you prepare for your exam. So for example, there are videos on how to perfect your exam technique, exam-specific guidance, and it can build your confidence. Also, there's debrief videos that are available from today for the pre-December mock exams. And finally, the study hub. And on here, you will find short quizzes to test your understanding and also practice and revision questions and flashcards. And these are all great resources to help you prepare for your exam. So that brings us to the end of today's live session, and I really hope you found it helpful and picked up some useful tips. Before we wrap up completely, a quick reminder to check out the updated resources section at the bottom of the screen. They'll be really helpful as you prepare for your exam. And as I mentioned at the start, don't worry if you missed anything. Everyone who registered will receive an email tomorrow with a link to the recording so you can watch this session all over again. Thank you, Trevor, for providing your valuable insights today, and also thank you very much to the team who've supported us in the back end to deliver the session. And finally, thank you to you all for joining today, and we wish you the best of luck for your exams.
Thank you very much, Hazel. Thank you for having me. And thank you, everyone, for attending.